You been enjoying your hunks and chunks?
My hunks and chunks of internet content. Yep.
Every time it's like I'm giving you the hunks and chunks, and I'm dead. I can't. For some reason, in my brain, I'm like, this is the funniest thing anyone has ever said. It's just.
I'm so glad that we
like
can
a
provide
nail.
you with the lowest bar. Hello and thanks for tuning into At the Table. Tonight, as always, we have our incredible hosts. Tonight we have Jess. Say hello, Jess.
Hi, Jess.
I swear to God. And I'm Sam.
Always a pleasure.
Always. Consummate professionals to us both. It has been an incredible ride from the last time we have recorded. You and I have both been up to quite a lot. We're going to go into that in a moment. There's been a paltry amount of news that I don't think other outlets that are more focused on that kind of thing will cover. There is one thing I wanted to pick up, but then after that we can talk about what we did yesterday, which was streaming a TTRPG, which is the first time I have done such. And it was incredible. But Jess, please talk to me about what have you been up to since we last recorded?
Yeah, so I had the absolute pleasure of heading down to Dragon Meet with Mr. Paul Foxcroft down in London, an annual TTRPG focused convention, which was really good fun to attend. We were only there for a few brief hours. And Paul Foxcroft, my main man, my boy, performed his heart out with the RP Geeks, who are another wonderful podcast and roleplay aficionados. Their entire motto, I believe, was Dungeons, Dragons, and Science. That was made completely clear with their style of gameplay. It was very, very good fun. Really enjoyed watching that. A lot of audience participation. And the game that they played was called New Jeans, Please. Each player was set up at the beginning as an animal with a very specific skill, trapped in a sort of zoo-like arena within a spaceship. The animals would attempt to overcome problems by asking for new genes. So, for example, Paul was a moth called Carlos, who was also a world-class chef. In order to...
Excellent.
This is the way that Paul Foxcroft plays games, is to make a character with one thing that doesn't quite fit, and it's the single funniest thing that anyone's ever done, in my opinion. And so, in order to overcome something, they would ask the audience, "Oh, new genes, please." Regarding the task, and then the dungeon master would be like, "Okay, so you need something with strength. What do you want?" Or you want to, in Carlos's case, Carlos wanted to eat the moon. And so we spliced a moth with a basking shark, and Carlos ate the moon. Life is good. And so, yeah, that was really good fun. I really, really appreciated being there, and I highly recommend checking out the RP Geeks if you can. There was also a bunch of tables, Rook Publishing Games, or games publishers run by Grant Howitt, and a bunch of others. We've got some stuff from there, and few other stalls that I remember sort of stuck out in my mind. Edible Dice, which looked fantastic. Oh, here we go. Yes. Speaking of Paul Foxcroft, here we go. Rowan, Rook, and Deckard. Thank you very much, Paul. Has just handed me their business card that we have pinned on multiple corkboards throughout the office. But yes, Rowan, Rook, and Deckard, I would highly recommend going and taking a look at all of the stuff that Grant Howitt has out and about, like Heart, Fire. He did a little lottery, bless, and all of his one-page RPGs like Honey Heist and Sexy Battle Wizards are two of my personal favorites.
Yes.
He had an entire spread of them, more than 20, and you rolled a dice and you got one randomly for £1, which is insane value.
Wow.
And if you got a 20, you got all 20 of them. It was just really nice. It was, I don't know, the vibe there was absolutely on point, shall we say. Yeah, so it happens every year down in London, and I would highly recommend anybody listening who is London based to get on down next year.
Come on down in a
Come
bit.
on
Keep your
down.
calendar open.
Yeah, they've got loads of live events, loads of stalls,
Nice.
and the atmosphere in the community really comes together. It's a lovely, lovely space to be in. So yeah, make sure you're looking on the lookout for Dragon Meet next year. Yeah, that's pretty much what I have been doing. And then aside from that, we've been together, you and I, Sam,
You and
got on
I.
the call for a very brief sort of first time meeting everyone for our Dragonlance campaign.
Yes.
That was exciting. That I am very, very excited for, because we also have CJ.
I just did a wiggle on a podcast. Yep. Okay. Yep.
At some point, we'll record the visuals for this.
Yeah.
And then so much more context will be had, and so much more will make sense. But not today.
I refuse to be visible to my podcasting public. You have to come over to a different stream to see me in a more material form. I'm an anathema voice.
Yeah. So aside from getting together, meeting everyone, sort of having the scene set for Dragonlance, we also streamed the very first episode of Questing Time Moonlighters on Sunday. That was an experience.
It's a game in spice.
Bye, the Tim Currys. Bye.
Okay, I had to explain to my partner because the Delightful Paul had managed to make a trailer, and there was Tim Curry references all over for just like announcing what's happening in that stream. And I was more excited about Tim Curry being in the trailer than I was in there. And I was like, look. She was like, oh, wow, that's really great. And I was like, but no, this is a really good reference to Command and Conquer Red Alert. It's got a boy. He lives in Cheshire. She's like, okay, all right, go back in the box.
It was a beautiful thing to have included, and I really hope it sort of set the tone for the absolute nonsense that entire stream was meant to be. So, yeah, that was a lovely little aside. We will talk more about that in a bit. But what have you been up to aside from all of the stuff with me?
Okay, so aside from that, I was doing, so I ran my regular Lancer game on the Monday, in which my players, like, we had a kind of like a debrief after the session because it'd been a little while since we'd played, somewhat of a not a forced hiatus, but our calendars just messed up, and we were like, okay, we'll just pop the game on ice for a little bit. Everything's in Foundry, so we're not losing any information. But we were talking about afterwards, I was like, hey, some of the role play stuff isn't really working. We're not kind of getting dynamic and interesting RP scenes that I was really trying to aim for, but I'm not as good at communicating across the board. And they both went, yeah, I don't think we see this system or this story as that. It feels more like we're watching a movie and we get to interact with small parts of it, and it's more cinematic in pieces. So they would, because I'm, giving a lot of what's happening in the story and a lot of the NPC characters, and they are interacting. And I'm not saying that because I've got two fantastic players, and I'm not saying that they're not good role players. I think they're just interpreting how to engage with it in a more kind of cinematic or even like video game cutscene type thing. They know that they can act in a limited way, but they're ready to sit back and just watch the story happen in between the really, really crunchy combat, which can tell a lot of narrative as well. So that was a really interesting moment for me because I was really trying to make it into a multimedia, very dense, kind of reference heavy and literature heavy and very kind of what's the word? It's like grippy. When you can get into something that has a lot of resources in it and you can basically just plunge your whole mind into a game and you're there like, I want to do that. And so I was trying to provide as much as I could through that in my limited time and using the other resources. And they were just saying, look, we're enjoying it, but there's a lot of visual stuff and we're just kind of taking that in and we're interacting it in a kind of button press cutscene way. I'm like, oh. So I'm less So I was really worried about the performance aspect. I thought I was letting them down, but they were just like, no, this is actually how we're interacting with it.
So it's more of like a click and point adventure that they're sort of running it through instead of maybe like I don't know, like an RPG or like a JRPG is what always comes to mind, like something Final Fantasy. It's less like that and more like you've got the scenes before you and you can choose to interact with little bits, and if you miss something, maybe it's not the end of the world. It's a really nice way, I think, maybe in video game terms, of separating out how players can sometimes interact with a story like that. They can either take every single resource that they have by the horn and go, yes, this is where I sit. I will use everything to my advantage. Or sometimes they'll just look at the scenery and go, okay, where do I fit in here? Where do I slot in? How do I make this go?
Absolutely. I think at some point we'll have to sit and talk about virtual tabletops, because I have noticed that a trend of this kind of thing happening more with virtual tabletops. I think mainly due to the way that they're published and maybe the way that they're produced on the end of the game master. So that happened. But yeah, that was a really interesting moment, and I felt a little bit more validated for the stuff that I had done. So because I was worried that they were just not getting to grips, and they're like, no, we're enjoying the story. It's not latching in our brain in such a visceral way as like a D&D campaign where it's like, right, I want to get drunk type thing and like mess up a tavern. But yeah, that was really interesting. And then I think I had my best home game D&D session within this campaign. We used some tactical battle maps that I mentioned in last episode. I used some physical props. I used a lot of. I engineered a lot of story beats into some fighting mechanics, and I used an unreliable narrator NPC.
You pulled out all of the stops.
So what I'm doing is, if my players are listening, thanks, that's really kind of you. Tune out now. Well, they already know, because I really enjoyed when we first played Rise of Tiamat, the Tyranny of Dragons campaign, Horde of Dragon Queen and Rise of Tiamat. I really enjoyed that. That was like that was the first 5th edition campaign we were playing that was like really punching it. And then I really wanted to play that, but change it so it made a bit more sense in my head. And we've gone to a new setting, but I kind of like, go fight Tiamat, punch her in the face. So I'm kind of borrowing the bones of that, because I find it really difficult to make a story of my own and then just placing it in this new setting. But then because I've put it in a new setting, a lot of the stuff that's inherently tied into Faerun and the Sword Coast, it just doesn't work. So I was like, actually, we need this NPC here, and I need the players to work out more about the NPC than what the NPC would give in the original text. So I'm like, okay, my players have figured it out by now. Basically, there's an NPC that's part of the Cult of the Dragon. She uses a modify memory spell on herself, and she pulls away memories of her being in the dragon cult. And then she just exists in the world as just a woman who is like an expert hunter-gatherer who suddenly knows a lot about dragons. And she's also put a greater restoration spell in her old battle armor from the dragon cult. So you have to fight her old battle armor to get this scroll back to restore her to how she was. So I'm really trying to show mechanics as story, which I think I'm at now with 4th edition or the 2014 D&D version. As wizards like us to use. But I'm going to keep calling it 5th edition because it's quicker. But yeah, I finally got to a point where I understand the story elements. I'm trying to pop them up to players to say this kind of thing is possible in the universe, and in this real situation, people don't have to have like selective amnesia or like bang their head. They're like, there's a spell that does this to show you how powerful spells are.
Exactly that.
Yeah.
I think when you begin to merge NPCs with, in particular, magic, attuned items as well, and you take them to another level that shows that they're not just like a performative element, they hold importance within the story. That pegs them there, and I think they become quite an important touch note. Whenever you are referring back to the campaign, you go, oh no, because they have this. and that's a very physical thing in this world, and you can refer back and go, yes, no, this is important now. Because it's so easy, I find, in so many games to come up with an NPC and then forget about them because they hold no relevance. Aside from, oh, they have a quest for you. Okay, fine, whatever. They have a nice personality, great.
Yeah.
But if they have an object, an item, a thing, a magic, or something with the right set of players, that can create enough mystery and enough excitement and enough of a connection that they use it then as like a touch point in the story. And that really cements an NPC in. And I will die on a lot of hills, but that one of the highest hills is that NPCs with more than a one-note background can elevate an entire campaign. Because you will have entire parties destroy themselves for the love of an NPC. And that NPC might just be something with a funny catchphrase or a cool dog. It could be anything. But generally the ones that I find make the hardest impact on players and parties are the ones that have a thing. If you give something that, and or they lead into something, or like, for example, your modified memory is more immersive. I'm a big fan of immersion.
I think it's like, it's gonna sound like really pretentious of me, but it's kind of like seeing Shakespeare done in various different versions, and you understand how those character roles are, and then you then put out the character roles in a campaign that you're doing, and then recontextualize them for what works. You're like, this character role is telling this, like this person, this character role is always going to do this kind of thing. If they are the betrayer, whatever actions the party are going to do, they're going to betray them because that's either what they do or it's an affectation of themselves. So I think understanding NPCs outside of the alignment chart of they do chaotic evil things because they are chaotic evil, and go, they have a role to play. They are the knight, they are the fallen, they are the this, and popping it into. And I know Becky's probably screaming through the podcatcher right now at like, there's like a special theater design where there's different character types. It's like something Dial Terte or something. But there's like the jester and like the sage and that kind of thing, where all these roles are so affixed for both the players and the audience that the audience know what they're going to expect. The players who are doing it know what they are expected to do, and so everyone can adjust their performance. Like as soon as you put like a received pronunciation very like high upper British like vampire-esque person, everybody knows what they're going to do. They're going to swill a dark wine in hand and take you.
That eloquent, that very beautiful way of appearing, that etherealness that is reserved only for the darkness. That very gothic element of high sophistication, yes. And you can see that as maybe generally being associated to evil, but just as much it might just be somebody hoity-toity, high-class, lawful good. You do not know, but generally it will not be someone care and fancy free. Or as one of my players once said, if you are chaotic good, you're not wearing a corset, or something along those lines. I can't quite remember.
Okay, yeah,
it might have been chaotic neutral. It's generally, if you are chaos, you're not wearing a corset, which for a lot of reasons.
That's very good.
But, it was one of the, it's an appearance and personality trait that you can type into their descriptions and how they're meant to act given the role that they are playing.
I think it's quite important to have things that your players know what they are and like are almost like telegraphed way in ahead, because there's a lot of stuff in RPGs, especially when you're a player, you don't always know the full contextualization of the world. So like, especially in my campaign where the players have made the world, but they've not had a lot of time to develop it or really sit and stew in it in the same way that I have, in a similar way that if someone hopped into like, was it the Candlekeep mysteries, but they were really versed with like Faerun lore, they could basically go, right, this book sounds like it's this. We can go to this location. There's a lot of known signposts there for players to like react to if they had time and had spent a lot of research there. But if you've got really telegraphed roles and really prominent NPCs who you understand what they are, that means your players can double down and go, I understand what this is. I will do what my character is going to do, and there's no like special twist. And I understand like sometimes subverting tropes is really good and obviously really rewarding for some things. But I think sometimes players want to know that they are powerful and they understand what's happening.
Yeah, and that they can also rely on the world because they have that context. So if they go, oh, I get the structure of this. I understand how this government would work. I understand how the laws of the locals here would work. I get the very basics of this world. Do not subvert my expectations. I can fuck around and find out.
Yeah.
I know kind of what the consequences will be. This town has guards. Something as simple as that would give you the idea that, cool, there is a local authority, and if you try to subvert that authority, then you will end up in jail or prison or executed for your crimes. Who knows? Depends on how severe your DM is. But again, something as simple as having that stage set in that way gives your players the ability to go, great, I know that rule. I know this. I can refer back to this. This will feed into my ability to choose what to do next.
Yeah,
I've been in campaigns before where it's not been made immediately clear that there is any kind of, let's say, authority, and so you are running amok and having a wonderful time, and all of a sudden, out of nowhere, guards, and you're like, hang on, we've been playing this for 5 weeks, and this has never been mentioned. Like, where have they been hiding? And it was, and it's a huge organization that has links to all parts of the city, and I'm like, but we just sort of waltzed in. Like, hang on, this doesn't make any. And then that's when confusion can start, and you can feel a little bit like, oh, I've been tricked by the DM, and I hate that feeling.
Yeah.
Really hate that feeling. So it's again, what you're saying with sort of setting.
Having the rug pulled from under you is much more rewarding when you helped make the rug.
Yes, absolutely. If you are a creator in your own demise, that hoisted on your own petard, brilliant. I've 100% done this to myself. God damn, who knew that throwing a bucket of piss over the guard would get me put in jail? But yeah, if it's a trap card that the DM pulls, that can feel unnerving. And it can maybe damage trust as well, because you then don't know what's going to happen in the world.
We'll point to it later, but you did it absolutely stupendously yesterday during the stream, where we came across a new faction who we didn't understand who they were. They were in a new location that we've never been to, and you painted a scene as we were entering in of lots of people, highly organized, looking very militaristic, and so as the players, we're getting information like, okay, so there's a big force who's organizing all this. This is getting some little notes in my head. And then you brought some people on who had very severe haircuts and very defined uniforms and very strict.
You can say Adeptus Sororitas. I'm not ashamed that I have 100% pulled from that character design. I'm not ashamed that I like big buff women in my campaigns.
But also, because it was basically flagged that it's Adeptus Sororitas, I was there I know what to do in this play. If I put a step out of line, I was very scared. My character was very scared in a way that in some maybe goofier campaigns, if one cleric turns up with a polished head and says, well, you have to do everything because my god says, I basically go all right, naff off and just sneak off. But I had the image and the cultural framing of Adeptus Sororitas, and I'm like, okay, we're doing what this very tall Gwendolyn Christie character is telling us to do, or else we're going to get stood on, and not in a way that we've really agreed to. But it gave us a jumping off point, and we understood that we were in serious trouble. But it then allowed us to do each of our little role-play moments around that without subverting the wider story. So it was excellent. You put a surface for us to react off. It was perfect.
So I'm glad. I'm glad. There was so I'm more than happy to talk about some of the backstory of all of the campaign that we have been playing in Moonlighters. Um, unless there is a specific jumping in point that you had pegged, I'm happy to just sort of roll into it now.
Well, I was gonna go Dragonlance first, and then we could. But actually, yeah, we'll go Dragonlance first, and then we'll rant for 3 hours about questing time.
This sounds like fun.
So our nerdy voice actor friend Jordan messaged me, or no, rather, I messaged him when I saw the Dragonlance stuff being advertised earlier in the year, and I went, "Oh wow, that looks really interesting." I think because the first trailer was voiced by Sora Agadashu.
Yes, it was that beautiful gravelly voice that you immediately know from The Expanse.
Yeah, absolutely. I was like, oh yeah, she's gonna call me a stupid bastard. That's fine. And then I got excited. Our friend Jordan got excited. I messaged him, said, look, if you ever pick it up, just let me know. I'd love to read through it, or like we'll talk about it together. And then I said, or if you run it. And I was like blatantly like, you run it. If you ever run it, let me know. I'd be happy to play along. And then he basically just went, oh, yeah, sure. And then like a couple of months down the line when it actually got released, he was like, hey, do you want to hop in? And I said, absolutely, 100%. And then he was inviting players on. And so he asked if I had any recommendations. And then I said on the pod. And then CJ was like, yep. And then Jordan invited Jess. So we have, God, how many players do we have?
We've got 5 now. 5 players and 1 DM.
Yeah.
Which is going to be very exciting to do, considering none of us are going to be in the same space, so we are going to have to do this over Zoom. It's going to be a lot, I think. And also we have a player who has never played D&D before. And then all of us have very differing levels of experience. And so it's going to be this really, I think, really nice way of welcoming someone into the D&D sphere and getting them addicted.
Lucy has played D&D before.
But yeah, she's played big on it.
She's played 1 or 2 campaigns, and they've basically like either cut short early, or they've just like they've just not gone as far.
Okay.
So I wasn't sure. I remember talking to Lucy and CJ when we met up once, and I fully hadn't realised his back catalogue of all the work, and I just went, "Oh, are you into TTRPGs?" And he was like, "Yeah, a bit," and like played it off really cool. And then when we got to talking, it's like, "Here's all my references. Here's all the stuff," and I'm like, "Oh, okay."
This is what it's like to make friends in the TTRPG space. It's to sort of feel out like where they're like how into it they are. So I have friends who are so into it it'll be all they talk about, and then others who are like, I dabble. And it feels almost rude to be like, oh, well, here is my latest campaign and design and all of this statistics. And what do you think of the new Hadozi design and all of this? Like, oh my god, the drama, and they're just like, I honestly have no idea. You then just like sort of sat there feeling like you will at some point. I will explain it to you. I'm sorry in advance.
I know a lot of the players who because I moved down to be with my partner down here, and a lot of my friends who we played D&D with have never picked up a TTRPG before, so this game was their first game, so there was a lot of kind of like getting to grips, but now like 4 years down the line, they're like, okay, wow. I want someone that one of my players actively asked like, oh, can someone run a one-shot for Call of Cthulhu? Like, I'd not mentioned it, it's not a system that I've dabbled with, and I was like, absolutely, yes. We'll pick up the latest edition of Call of Cthulhu to run, and now they're talking through the mechanics of murder mysteries, and they're like, this is basically a TTRPG but with like different roles. And I'm like, who are these nerds and where did we pick them up from? But yeah, I think it's really interesting when you pick up new people and they're like, sorry.
Yes, but I love it because you there is something absolutely magical about being able to watch someone love the thing you love and grow to love it in such a the beautifully specific way that TTRPGs work, and the rules and all of the different facets to it, and the community, and that the global campaigns that can be run, and you find someone and they just get in and squirrel in and love it, and then when you talk to them a few months down the line, their interests have developed, they've gone somewhere else. I don't know, that sparks a joy in me, Marie Kondo style, that just sets my soul on fire. And so and I've never met anyone that has never been into playing a TTRPG. That's the beautiful thing. I think either I just make friends with really good people, or I just don't know assholes. But I think there's a TTRPG for everyone. I do believe that.
I think.
Wait, ahead of me.
Yeah, I think at this stage we are definitely, I mean, I said it in the Hunks and Chunks bit at last episode, but we are definitely in the golden age of TTRPGs. There's TTRPGs for everything. I was watching a TikTok by Laurie, I forget her second name, but she's written some stuff for Lancer that I want to get into. But she also wrote a RPG about transgender vampires living to be 300 so they can get to on the clinic waiting list.
Oh my god.
And I was there like, that is so specific but incredibly fantastic. I was like, I'm gonna have to pick that up.
Me too.
Yeah, I was
you said it.
I'll have to find what that is. I'm gonna have to write down in my notes trans vampires, and I'm gonna
I've got a copy of Thirsty Sword Lesbians somewhere.
Oh, yes.
And by me I mean Paul has, and I want to play it so badly.
System agnostic RPGs sounds like such an interesting, like, meta commentary narrative. Like, it blows my mind. I listen to Dungeons and Drama nerds do Thirsty Sword Lesbians for, I can't remember what system it was, but they were talking about it, preloading it, and talking about how they build the characters in, and I was there like, I felt like my mind peel away knowing that you could put one system on top of another and it worked flawlessly. And I'm like, what's this feeling? It was incredible.
An awakening of a different kind.
Yeah.
But that's what the entire book is about. So it's perfect. It looks so brilliantly pleasing to play. And so I really want to do something with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I don't burn the questing time channel to the ground, it would be really cool to do something on there with that. Just play a lot of very gay fighters. I want that so badly.
Absolutely.
Please. We've sort of gone off the topic of
Dragonlance. Yep. Okay. We were talking about new players. Yeah, so we've got kind of like, I would say quite a range of experience with TP. The dice thing that you're listening about.
Dice fun. Yeah.
Dice fun. Yeah, I found Dragonlance a really interesting one for one point, which is it asks you to put a lot of limitations on some of the character creation stuff, which was very interesting. But just because of the setting, backstory, and lore. Yeah. And I don't know which way round it came out. I don't know whether Dragonlance, because there's obviously the Dragonlance books, which I'm reading, which are fascinating in their own way, mainly for historical precedents, because they've got a band of adventurers, like some men, some women, but collectively they're all referred to as he's. And I think it's written by two women. It's okay. I need to unpick that as a different thing for a different time.
That's a different podcast.
That's a different podcast, which I'd love to be on. Hi, call me. But yeah, so. It has to put a lot of limitations, but it also introduces a whole new species for the players to pick up. So what were your thoughts when Jordan sent over a doc saying you can't be any of these, and the magic users are basically tied to a college, and your what are they called? Your clerics and your druids are like limited. They are like the most powerful of those in the setting. How was that to like bring on?
So that really threw me for a loop, because I wanted to, in this campaign initially, I hadn't really read any of the backstory or the lore. I just went, okay, cool. We've got new players. The part I am most happy playing in any given party is support, or tank. And I decided in this one I'll be tank support, I will be a life cleric, and I'll just make sure everybody is able to stay alive because this is a brand new group of people and I quite like that as an idea. So ran into the magic users, clerics not having gods because all of the gods are dead quite early on. And really interested to see the dynamic between the Pantheon and how everything had been working since the Cataclysm and what had been going on since then, and then how that sort of tied into the story as well. And I was trying my best to try and work and make. Initially, I wanted to be a war priest, and I thought, oh, this would be really interesting because it is, of course, gods and war and monsters. But I also wanted to add a little bit of depth to my character, and we already had a war priest in the party, so I went with a pretty classic life domain. And the way that the gods are laid out now, I'm not actually totally sure. I need to give my character a little bit more thought, but I'm not entirely sure which god she'll be going with.
Yeah.
And so it leaves you quite open to a lot of stuff and a lot of interpretation, but I think the one I was looking for or looking at was Mikasis or Mishasis. Again, need to go back to the books and that, but it's all, love and humanity and caring. But again, I don't think she's been seen for 500 years. So again, we're looking at this sort of element of going, when you rely on your God and you rely on your religion and your religion isn't there and hasn't been, and it is established that it's not really known where your powers are coming from now, or where you draw your magic from, while working on blind faith, and that within itself has sort of become a religion. That's the way I'm sort of seeing it, and that's the way I'm trying to play it, and then that's what I'll try and channel through Walmart. But we will see. That's her name. Look. I play specific characters. I play support tanks, and I give them really fucking dumb names, and I just like that. This is my toxic trait. So, but yeah, no, Walmart is. What I'm excited for is that initially it was just going to be life domain cleric, very happy to keep everyone alive by punching.
Yeah.
But this is adding a layer of depth to her, a search for a god, a search for religion, and you get to play with that in your character's head for a bit. Because I think it's very easy for paladins and clerics in particular to just go, no, my god, my religion, that's the best do. But if they're not there, you can't really fight for that. So this leaves this massive void, this massive question for magic users who do rely on their god's benevolence, that, if you're not a sorcerer or wizard or warlock, you have to look beyond the idea of religion in order to seek power. And that, I think, is a really powerful concept within a fantasy realm based on war. I think there's so many moving parts to it. It's very exciting.
I think Dragonlance has come back to D&D at such a weird point, because obviously we're at the end of the we're soon. I mean, I say soon. Aren't we like 2024 for one D&D to come out? But we're kind of at the high point, the summit of what this edition is, what it can achieve. And Dragonlance basically says, okay, you can't do these, and then we're asking you to recontextualize a lot of the other stuff. There's in part of the species lore for Kryn, there's a lot of stuff about how the different elves interact together and how they work, and it actually seems to be, I won't say like the Faerun stuff's not meaningful, but it doesn't really come out in the mechanics and the gameplay as much as I think it will in Dragonlance. And as you say, I think it's asking your characters to ask a lot of questions of themselves and say, what am I doing here? I know in the start of the books, you basically meet all the adventurers after they've been apart for 5 years, trying to answer questions either about themselves or about the wider context. And they all come back without full answers. And I think that's the theme. I haven't read further into the book because I daren't, but it's, but I think obviously, there's just a lot of questions in this going forward, and quite a lot of the standard the standard species are off limits. And as you say, you're really questioning what is power how do I come across it? And also, I think from the history, a lot of the higher level domain clerics have been wiped off the map. They've just been killed. So you're
I'm
the
not
highest
entirely
authority.
Sure. I think in the original lore, someone was saying in the original lore that basically every 14th level character was just sort of put in a different plane. I don't know if that was... I might have misread that completely, and that might be relating to something else. But it seems like anything over 14th level was just sort of pulled into another plane by... insert god name here. To stop them getting too powerful. Again, it's another limit. It's going to be interesting to see how the party, as limited as they are at this point, grapple with each of their flaws and each of their the ways that they work around it. I think we've been quite spoiled in the way that we've been playing D&D a lot of the time, or I know I definitely have, which is I fuck around, I find out, and I use everything that I possibly can, and I'll try my best just to be like, cool. I'm not a min-max person, but I am very much I'm making my character as wild and as bizarre as possible, and they will make the crazy choices to see if something happens. And this is going to be so different. And I think we're going to feel the constraints, and there's going to be a path to follow that we have to analyze and then consider and then move. It's going to be deep, and I'm very excited.
Yeah, I think that's where I'm at. It's going to be really interesting. I also messaged Jordan because canonically, the big bad in this campaign is also analogous to other big bads, and I was like, I'm really excited to have another pop at this big bad. And he was like, Yep, I'm also very excited to have another pop. But yeah, I think we'll put a pin in that for the Dragonlance stuff, because I can feel like I'll just ramble on. Also, I've made a very pretty boy elf fighter, and he's beautiful, and I made him on Hero Forge, and he has a very big hat, and he's gorgeous. And like, I just keep bringing him up in Hero Forge and just rotating him, and then I'll just
I'm doing the same with Walmart.
I keep doing that, and then changing one or two items and going, that's better. And then like half an hour I go, no, I was a visionary before, everything was perfect, and then changing it back. So yeah, the
way that Walmart carries herself and her entire personality is pretty much entirely based off of the way that Hero Forge miniature is going to come out.
Good.
Which is she's a badass lady who likes punching, but also, how are you feeling?
I'm punching these guys to save your feelings.
I'm kicking you with medicine is the general vibe of her, and I just love that. She feels so badass, but is going to be complicated. And look, strong, tall, buff women who are also complicated. Oh, no, not again.
No. How dare they keep finding me?
How dare I keep creating them? Oh, no.
No.
What a terrible thing.
Yeah, it's a setting and that's begging for us to make nuanced characters who are asking questions of themselves, and we're just yeah. I think that's all I'm going to say on Dragonlance. I'm utterly excited.
Yes.
Jordan's now busy. I'm assuming in like a locked room with several tomes from the 80s, just like scribbling stuff until the new year. And he was like, "Oh yeah, we'll get started on this date." And then we pushed him for a date slightly sooner. He was like, "Okay, that could also work." And I'm like, "Good, excellent."
We're excited to play. I do hope we didn't come across too pushy, but I do really want to play it. So.
No, I think he's really excited. I think he's set himself long enough that he can do enough prep, which is important. Dear listener, when you pick up a campaign, read the whole thing through once. Make tiny little notes, because if and when stuff goes awry, it means you can steer it back knowing the full arc of the course. Don't do what I did and prep Tyranny of Dragons week by week, session by session, because then when stuff goes awry, you're like, I'm not sure how far off course this is and how much it will ruin it. Spoiler, it didn't.
This is going to tie into the Moonlighters campaign quite nicely, actually.
Oh, excellent. Well, why don't we...
Very happy.
Why don't we moonlight over? This week's sponsor is Dragon Template, a D&D accessories workshop that specializes in accessories for your table. I have the Necromancer GM screen, which is enough space for me to hang up all my notes, which is terribly handy because it also includes some tiny little magnetic skulls, which that are also intricately carved as part of the decor when they're not already inside the board. I'm incredibly happy with my DM screen, which I ordered through Etsy, although you can contact Dragon Template on their website. They have wonderful customer service, their products are second to none. They have DM screens, players' adventure kits, which are special kind of boxes for your dice and your characters. They also have a whole table, which I encourage you to have a look at. They've recently revamped the DM screen, so it is lockable and has little LED lights to increase the atmosphere. I thoroughly encourage you to head over to their website, which is Dragon Template, and the 8-bit is the number 8. So it is Dragon, TEMPL, the number 8.com to have a look. Thank you for listening to this ad read. And talk about questing time, Moonlighters. I can hear the music in my head.
I love it. I love that it's got a synth feel and theme, and I love that it's so 80s in vibe. I'm adoring all of the character concepts. I'm very happy. I'm very happy with the way that everything has come out. So it's the first episode that we played in, and that you were introduced to the group as a whole, found floating in space, the tabaxi ecologist using his Drake like a lilo.
You know what?
That was a particularly nice touch. I really enjoyed.
Thank you. In my head, I was there like, well, it's obviously not going to be like an alligator lilo because drakes have different hip joints than alligators. And then I spent about 10 minutes trying to find out what the wording was so I could talk about that on stream. And I went, that's not what I'm meant to be doing right here. I'm meant to be playing a character.
No, but this is the thing. You are playing to your character. Your character is an ecologist, and they want to know a little bit more about the creatures that they are encountering. And so that makes sense. So the other players that we have on board for Questing Times Moonlighters as well are 3 characters from the Critical Drinking universe. Sorry, 3 players from the Critical Drinking. Nacho, Sasha, and Emily. An autonome bard, a astral life domain cleric, astral elf, and plasmoid fighter. Each of them are
incredible, having
fun. And this is my entire thing. So the campaign that we're running for this is designed to just be dumb fun. I'm very loose and running loose with all of the rules. We also started yesterday as well with some setbacks and tech difficulties, and so the stream went up like an hour later than it was initially meant to. So of course by that point on stream, and when you are streaming a campaign, knowing that maybe you have a set number of episodes that you want to cover because of schedules and everybody else doing things, but also doing it on a weekly basis, you are very limited in when things go wrong, how you are able then to move your campaign notes and the milestones that you want your players to reach. And so losing an hour, I was like, oh, okay. And also with this being sort of my first time DMing a multi-episode campaign on stream, I was very aware that this going wrong was like, oh no, it's bad juju. And also I'm going to have to find a way to make up this time so that we do still have a complete episode that can maybe go up on VOD. But also it's not too late that people are getting really, really tired. And because we're all in different time zones, people have a lot of other different stuff to do. Like, I'm under no illusion that this is the most important thing in the world. It definitely isn't. It's meant to be a very dumb, fun stream. And so...
But I think, I mean, touching on that, did you... in this capacity, you are a twofold performer. You're performing to us, the players... and then you are also performing to the stream, the fourth wall, as it were. And you're doing that either by reflectively performing with us and us giving good performances back, and you're also performing initially for the stream to get references and things that they understand. And obviously there's a lot of, as can happen with technology, technical difficulties do occur. Did you, and I know it can be when you know that there's an observer, it can feel like an additional kind of not player, but like there's a presence that you're appealing to.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Um, Especially with the setup that we have, so we can see the chat in that bottom left-hand corner the entire time, and so you get to see people picking up on stuff and having fun with the jokes and reacting. And then, of course, when they, I don't know, maybe stop doing that for an extended period of time and it's getting a little bit later on, and you go, oh, okay, so this isn't maybe as interesting as it was earlier on. I mean, you pick up on that very quickly and you attempt to adjust what you are doing and bring, a new sense of excitement or something to get people, or basically make sure that they're still there is what you want. But ultimately, the stream itself, as I keep saying to myself, it's a very dumb, fun stream. You shouldn't feel any sort of pressure to perform or anything like that. You just be yourself and have a nice time. And reptilian brain me at the back is like, no, perform. You must perform for the people. The people want to know. And it's that sort of that fight and trying to find that balance. And so I've done one-shots on Questing Time before, and we've played with a bunch of people, never the same story twice, and had a really nice time with that. And I found that very, very manageable. And I was like, this will be absolutely fine to do a multi-episode stream and perform that to people watching. People will want to watch that, sure.
Yeah.
And you are, I think, fighting with yourself a lot, going, do people want to watch this? Oh God, am I any good? Do people like me? Will I be the next Brennan Lee Mulligan? These are the dumb questions that go through your head. I think as well, because we live now and we have incredible DMs that you see that are performing for their players only, but it feels like they're performing to you, and it comes so naturally. You've got your Mercers, your Abria Iyengas, you've got your Brennan Lee Mulligans, and you want that. I so desperately want that. I would love to be anywhere near their level. They are so enigmatic to watch. Your Paul Foxcrofts, who are natural and gifted and born, but these people are all performers. They all have jobs where they perform. Dickhead, here's a writer. I sit behind a desk 8 hours a day. I don't perform. It's not in me. And so this is a brand new sort of venture in that regard. And so it's attempting to taper all of my expectations, all of you guys' expectations, all of the stream's expectations, and go, cool, let's run this through and have fun and stop trying to put pressure on yourself, even though you can feel it in the back of your head. But at the end of the day, when all of your players are bouncing off each other as well as they were yesterday, as well as you guys were all having fun and making light of situations and attempting, never in a million years would I have expected when the ship landed on Hakatha and you saw the military presence for TBD to be like, cool, it's time to disguise ourselves as military personnel.
Yeah.
It's time to use this disguise mechanism. And so, yes, the quality is going to come through pretty terribly in comparison to some of the other streamers and some of the other, especially like the big TTRPG streams that you see. But at the same time, I haven't done enough to warrant being able to be like, oh yeah, no, absolutely, I can splash out on this purely for this reason.
Yeah, this is fine.
Yeah, like I'm probably never gonna do that. But again, you sort of see in the comments and you see people interacting with the stream going, ooh, it's really janky. It's really bad frame rate. It's really this, and I'm like, yes. I am very sorry that you are used to production quality streams. I'm afraid this is not one of those, my guys.
Yeah.
But it's also ensuring that, like, if streams like this exist, like I could upgrade to a different computer for sure, and I know like others could as well. But I think it's important that streaming, especially in the TTRPG community and people that just want to like share their stories with others, that the pressure to have the best equipment and to have the sharpest image and to have the best connections and assume that like nothing ever goes wrong, those pressures are put on other creators. I think it's important to have streams that reflect that and that have that limitation of hardware.
What?
Because Moonlighters is like three of us are in different continents.
Yeah.
At the very least, and then only two of us are in the same time zone here. It's harder to be like, yeah, sure, if you could just boot up your nice shiny PC, that'd be amazing.
Yeah.
No, everyone's working on laptops because everybody's in 20 different places at once. So yeah, and that as well is always something that sort of, I guess, plays in my mind and going, oh, does this look good enough? Uh, does this sound good enough? In that respect, I went out, decided to stop relying on the microphone attached to the 2007 Apple earpods I've been using, and actually bought a microphone for the first time, and it feels alien. It's just not my thing. But again, it's that pressure to be like, oh, we're streaming something. There has to be a performance development. We want it to be the best. And so investing into all this hardware while simultaneously holding the opinion of, no, it's just dumb fun. It's fun.
I will double, like, you and Paul have put a tremendous amount of delicate and very well thought out preparations ahead of time. You took all the steps you could have. And I think the one thing that has won without, because I went back and watched the VOD in a couple of places just to make sure that things were going okay. The audio has been perfect every time. And for someone who's a very audio led person, if something sounds bad, I bounce straight out. But everyone's audio was really good. The visuals, I think, were keyed up because we're in a very like role play heavy space. Like, if you had a map prepped for all the locations we were yesterday, you would have had to have prepped for like 2 whole months just on like those maps and images. That's not useful. That's not. And as you said, you had to modify what you were going to do in the first session, because I could easily see a couple of encounters that did happen to us that were, I won't say sped up. I think they were brought to their logical conclusion ahead of what we were going to do.
It was looking to sort of modify things to a point where, sort of looking back at it, I know things that I would have done differently. But for example, the Eyemonger encounter, initially that was just going to be a large aberration instead of like a gigantic one. And so you guys would have had the option to fight it with the battle narwhal, which would have been amazing. And then we didn't have time. And so it's chasing you, but it's slow. Leave.
I really liked that encounter, and the way that we hit that ship that had fouled air immediately went from, okay, we're fun nebulous beings in space and we're just gonna go do a thing, to it's really dangerous. Like immediately that it was set up as, okay, because you'd planned these things and that was going to teach us something about the universe. And it went from the universe can be fought to the universe is scary. We can do stuff, but here's a good tip: you can run away. And you're also teaching us about the air mechanics. You were teaching us about like the sense of scale in space. So you were able to impart lessons upon us that we would then use to inform our role play and kind of understanding the world around. So they weren't. So I think that was the perfect way to introduce them as immediate, scary, and something that we had to figure out quickly, rather than have, because I would have loved to like have a drawn out fight, like very tactical fight with an eyemonger. But as you say, like I need to get to this story point so it makes sense for the next episode to kick off. And it's really important for us to establish in the first episode. So you still got to teach us that. I can definitely foresee a choice in your brain where you were like, do I drop it?
Yeah, there was initially going to be a point where the Eyemonger wasn't going to appear at all. And you would just come across this ship and then learn about fouled air bubbles the hard way, because if there's anything I know about you lot, it's that you're inquisitive and you'd have found it. But I also wanted to add in, and Charlie being an ecologist, I wanted there to be creatures that are new and that you wouldn't have seen before on Toril. I wanted that element of the Spelljammer universe to really come in. And so I made the decision, no, I do want that. And I do want this. And so I will find the compromise of no fight now. Okay, no fight in the first episode.
Yeah.
Maybe fights later. But attempting to sort of tee that up and go, cool, moving forward. I don't know, I hated sacrificing it, but I know it was the right thing to do for the stream. But if we had more time and if we were all together,
yeah,
and there wasn't that element of other people are watching this, oh, I'd have let you guys go ham. I would have let you try to figure out how to fight it, what to do, and had way more interaction with it. But for that part, I kind of lament what I did with it, but it was a necessary evil in that situation, just to get to the jumping off point with the next episodes.
Yeah.
Which is sort of what I was talking about. Well, what you were talking about before, and having that flexibility of planning. With what this is and what this campaign is going to be, and being a very character-centric campaign, I have to be really flexible with the reactions and take into account the reactions that every single player has in each episode to specific things.
Yeah.
I will make no secret of the fact that there are things in there that I would love you to probe, and I would love you to go and find out more about and ask questions and investigate. First episode obviously was maybe not the space at the time just to set the scene for both you and the audience, but in the next episodes you'll have way more freedom to explore. And I will leave it to you to explore. And based off of that, I'm expecting a lot of the session progression to come from you in that regard. And so I cannot plan for what you are going to do. In the same way I couldn't have planned for you attempting to disguise yourself to fit in with the with the Sunless Sisters.
Yeah.
This is going to work off of your reactions. And so with that in mind, and also performing it as well to a wider audience, it's so heavily reliant on like that improvisational element. Improv is not my strong point. That is Paul's strong point. Paul, the original Questing Time cast are all improvisers, and they're all absolutely phenomenal. I could have watched them perform all day. They are excellent. They can riff off each other and they can find those funny nuggets, and they know how improv works and what makes it funny. And then to bring that into a D&D setting is unparalleled. We are not that, and I am still attempting to sort of work a little bit of it in. So in that regard, it is in its essence attempting to stay very true to the Questing Time brand while being entirely different from the Questing Time brand.
Yeah, as you say, we've got very different backgrounds, and I think it's quite emblematic that you introduced a mechanic called light links, because I think I can definitely foresee that's how you're planning it. You're going to introduce a thing. Here is your light. Please be drawn towards the light. Fuck around and find out all around the light. That's incredible. But here is the light. Here's the thing I would like you to investigate, and then do stuff around. I'm more than happy with that. So yeah, I'm really excited, and I will also touch on, because you've worked with them before on Critical Drinking, but Nacho, Emily, and Sasha have been so welcoming. So this is as much as this is like Jess's first time DMing on Questing Time, running a long form campaign. This is my first time playing any TTRPG on a stream that has. At all. I was like, that has an audience. I was like,
ever? Yeah, no, ever. And you are killing it.
Thank you. It's really nerve-wracking. I'm quite an anxious person. This is one of the reasons I do podcasts, is that you don't have to watch me. It's that I mess around with my face a lot, and so all last night I was like, am I putting my fingers to my lips too much? Is this? Am I confident? But you and the other players were really good in our session zeros and our conversations since then, at like feeding each other little bits and just kind of like laying it. And then during the stream, I heartily recommend this if you're part of a new group or part of an established group and you're thinking, how can we do more role play. And it doesn't need to be, okay, well, obviously we will copy the third act from Othello and we will go from there. Find a thing for your character to do with another character's thing. It can be anything. I was heartwarmed, and so was the stream. Like, I saw everyone like making lovely comments. Sasha as TBD made a little bed for my Drake to lie in.
Oh, that was so cute.
It was incredibly cute. But any mechanics used? None. Like, any resources used? None. Did it require me to give critical understanding and bodily mechanics to Sasha to understand that? No. My character is new to the ship and my Drake needs somewhere to sleep. Sasha was like, tick and tick. It showed me as a player that this other player sees what we're doing and is saying yes, and we want to include you in the space. As a character, it shows me that TBD is caring, wants to solve solutions, and is interested in my Drake. So that I can then go back and like go, oh, maybe like I send my Drake to go play with TBD later. And Emily playing Dickie like saw the ecologist part of my bio and was like, you and I as scientists together, and just like hooked in. And then Nacho as Jellamite. God, Nacho as Jellamite.
It's the voice. It's
so good. Like so many funny moments and so much body comedy and like slapstick, which is just infinitely transferable. But everyone took a moment to do a thing with my character and just tie me in. And I was incredibly nervous. I was like drinking coffee to like keep myself awake, and like I was doing all these kind of things. But everyone took time and did something really lovely to like tie me in and be like, hey, it's okay. You can goof around in this space with us. So it was so lovely.
I was partially surprised because I initially thought that they would scrutinize you and be like, what are you doing out in space? Do you have any ill intentions? But again, the way that they had set everything up, the backstory that they had for the Narwhal, the entire way that they met was very happy-go-lucky.
Yeah.
And so they are, as they are themselves, this very happy-go-lucky crew that have sort of welcomed you in, and you sort of coming on being like, I am down for whatever, providing that Mandrake gets a home and I go and see some animals. They went, yes, okay, passing the vibe check. Come on board, son. And in that sort of moment, like I think what I detected was like, oh, okay, interesting. So it's just immediate acceptance. This is nice. What was maybe going to happen if you guys had gone to Hakatha and you had basically been like, I'm just a passenger.
Yeah.
I have no affiliation to this group whatsoever. The Sunless Sisters might have reacted differently if you had been set apart. However, they viewed you as a crew from the way that you all acted. And so, as a crew, you have had all of your names docked as the crew of the ship. And so that is now the sort of official designation that they are holding over you. But depending on how you guys would have played that, would have impacted the entire thing. And I'm also not entirely afraid to say that if Emily rolled a 5 on the die, I remember when you guys were docking, odds were Sunless Sisters and evens were the God's Blood Cabal. And depending if she had rolled a 2, 4, or a 6, you guys would have docked in a God's Blood Cabal-owned spaceport. So again, the entire
vibes.
There were 2 missions that I had set out and ready for you guys to take at that point. And depending on the roll of a dice, depended on where you ended up. So that was really exciting. That was really nice to be able to like, oh, okay, it's happening. And that gave me something to look forward to, because I was like, I don't know how this is going to go.
I find the factions that you've established really interesting in terms of like, as soon as we've aligned ourselves with one, we're going to have complications with the other, like in terms of like transversing the space, but also literally transversing space, we then have to make plans because some of these light links are owned by one faction and some are owned by another, and we have to get to a certain destination where there is cross-faction ownership of these light links. And so so I'm really intrigued to see how we interact with them, and we're basically like rubber stamped by one faction. So we'll see how much of that comes off with some soap and some good old elbow grease, so we can just pass for the other bit. But I'm heavily intrigued, and I think that having like a 2-faction thing really helps us lean into quite a, forgive the pun, nebulous space, because we're literally in space and there's a lot of stuff that can happen. There's almost like infinite possibilities. So for us to understand what we're going to do going forward, and then see these 2 factions having a very visible and very locational based ownership of some of these places, can really put the hack. Like, as soon as you started saying Sunless Sisters and you popped in the text doc ahead of time, I was like, oh boy, okay, great, okay.
But again, this is, as to sort of tie it back to what we were saying before about setting and stage and expectations. In the first episode of this campaign, I thought it was important to establish the rules of the universe.
Yeah.
And that's harder to implement than the rules of the world,
yeah,
I find. So in an attempt to sort of bring order to something that I can reliably say, this is going to be 10 episodes, you guys will be able to reach the end of these 10 episodes and do the thing while still having all of this space before you and a lot of options open to you, and your play dictates how that ends. To that effect, it is important to have those cornerstones and go, yes, space is very vast, however there are elements and there are limitations and there are all of these bits in play. Things like star craziness is not part of Spelljammer, and going a little bit too mad if you spent too much time in space. In the books, it's very much like if you attune to a Spelljammer and have a direction in mind, you just get there. And I just felt that was a little too simple for what Spelljammer is and how it comes across.
Yeah.
And so I wanted there to be a little bit more of rounding, and especially for something with a time limit on it that we could have. Go, cool. You know what happens if you spend too long out here. This will maybe get you to engage with things. This will maybe get you to go, ooh, yeah, we're not feeling too great. Let's stop off at the next star system and maybe see what's there.
I think you're right. I think it is written that it's basically you're managing resources air. And I think that's a bit too abstract for us as beings on a planet with finite but seemingly limitless amounts of air for us to breathe. But adding the star craziness is like a long going thing where you've got people who live for unknown amount of time, because in the astral sea you don't age. It's kind of like a burning platform to drive roleplay and story. And also, like, I think I really like Dickie's character. I really like Dickie, Emily's character, because there was a real sense of euphoria and enthusiasm for any interaction. Like, any stimulus is stimulus, and that's wonderful. And I suppose when you're like in space or you've lived for so long, you just, experiences are experiences, negative or positive, and Emily played that to the hilt, and it was incredible.
Role of the thrill seeker, she is absolutely embodying, and I wouldn't have expected her to play it like that. I thought initially she was going to be this very vampiric, very stoic, very, I am more ancient than you would ever believe, and I know more than you. I have seen this universe 1,000 times over, like nothing surprises me anymore. And instead it is like grabbing every opportunity by the horns and being like, this is finally exciting, yes. And of course this is a character sort of personality that melds with the rest of the group, who are also very much in that very happy-go-lucky space. And so no one's outcast at this point. Nobody's feeling out of sorts. And it's clear that you guys are a team.
I feel
So in the
Emily
beginning, this is nice.
absolutely. I feel Emily has really grabbed a hold of a charismatic, gravitational pull captain character where you can see all these other characters obviously drawn to Dickie. Like I can definitely see TBD like drawn to Dickie, just like, oh, it's really nice to work with someone who understands. Like I don't understand a lot of I haven't read a lot of the backstory of the other characters because I'd like to find out in play. But like I can see that TBD just like wants to be useful and wants to serve on the ship, but also like fulfills a performative art because TBD is a bard and gets to do a lot of like singing and lots of and has an audience in Dickie and has an audience in Jelemiah. And I can see Jelemiah as like this really interesting character that's really focused on the well-being of the ship as like a physical vessel, but is also really physically strong. And I can definitely just see like, yeah, if I mean, obviously Emily's playing D&D with us, but like if Dickie was playing D&D, even like a JRPG, and was like, here are my favorite little characters that I'm going to take on this adventure with me, I can see Dickie going like, yes, yes, and yes. And I'm really excited to unspool the other characters and just see what happens. Yes. And also unspool my own character who is like a bunch of ecologists who I have worked with. And also I picked an accent, so he's a bit of a geezer. But yeah, so I'm really excited, and I think you've provided a perfect opportunity for us to do that in a setting that's new and exciting for us. I think, is there anything else that you were like, I did want to talk about this?
I think anxiety in streaming TTRPGs is something to really touch on, because again, the age we live in, we see people, the larger streams, people sort of going in and being able to so effortlessly and flawlessly make everybody laugh, and also have these characters that everybody loves. And it seems to come so naturally to them. And I think there is a very strong sense of imposter syndrome that a lot of people can feel, and a lot of anxiety, as you were saying, like if you are not used to that sort of performance element inside of it, it's very easy to get caught up in that. And it's also very easy to perform for the audience instead of for yourself. And what I would love to touch on with it is absolutely okay to disregard what the audience is seeing and focus on the game that you are playing and play it to the way that you have fun. Because at the end of the day, if you're having fun, then everybody watching will be having fun. You don't have to worry about that element of it. Focus on yourself and your party and your campaign, and have fun to the best of your ability. People feed off that. People feed off of a genuine sense of connection. And that arguably is why I'd like to think that things like, Critical Role has taken off. You fall in love with the relationships between characters and the genuine sense of self that each of them brings to each campaign and each character that they play, and those relationships between one another, and the trust that they have there. And that trust develops when the anxiety in and of itself isn't there. They're doing it for themselves. They're not doing it for you. They're doing it because they're having a nice time. And so when it comes to streaming and it comes to that anxiety element, I think what I would like to sort of maybe hone in on more, and will be doing in future games, is do what makes you happy. I mean, you can see sort of with like with Emily in particular, Emily just goes, yep, I am performing the character exactly as I want to perform this character. This is for me. TBD quite happily goes off on a tangent, singing songs as they would like to. And Nacho farting in buckets and just making, jokes as and when because they can, is brilliant. And so I'm sure each of us feels anxiety at any given point, considering that it's not just us in the room. But ultimately, when you guys all met and I could see you all interacting and figuring everything out and speaking to one another, that's when I felt all sense of anxiety in me in particular melt away. So I was like, yeah, these guys are carrying it fantastically. You guys are working. It's just the vibes are there, which is, I think, the most important.
You know what I think was also really good was
Mm.
and I know this whole podcast is peering behind the curtain, but after the stream finished, we had a quick debrief.
Mm.
And you were like, hey, how did that go? Like an actual like grounding check where you were like, how did that go? This isn't performative. There's nobody else in the room right now. It's just you and me. Now tell me, where did the stream hurt you? But it was really grounding, and you were like, look, and I really like your point of the safety tool, which I use because it's a lighter touch and my players are happy with it. Stars and wishes doesn't work here.
Yeah.
You want quite brutal feedback, and kind of brutal. I think you want unvarnished critique, but you also want unvarnished enthusiasm, as I called it, hammers and chocolates.
For me, and I'm very happy to say this, I do not like the if someone is attempting to hold back what they actually mean when they are talking to you. I very much prefer it for me personally. If you have feedback, give it to me straight, and that way I can work with it. I'm not going to see it as a personal attack. I'm not going to see it as anything like that. I want the bare bones of it. And stars and wishes for me, I've found in the past has put a veil over true intent and meaning, and people have gotten lost in the way that they're attempting to put something across in order to spare someone else's feelings. I don't really get that personally. However, as I said with you guys, you give me your feedback as bluntly as possible. You tell me what you want, and I will try and make that happen. And we will see what we can do in sort of following things. If there is something in this that you really did not like, let me know. However, between you guys, unless you are very happy to go with the same approach that I use, stars and wishes, hammers and chocolates, be very, very nice and kind to one another, and be thoughtful of the ways that you would word something. And so that's what works for me.
Yeah.
And then it's individual, I find. I
think you've got a twofold thing here, and it's something I definitely feel when I'm doing TTRPGs. It's definitely something I feel when I do LARPs. Is event drop, which is
event drop.
So event drop is what's really interesting about the LARP scene is that they've really done a lot of meta-analysis on emotions within scenes and within the fictional context, and also analysis of feelings outside of that context, but within the context of it is a performance art. So LARP drop is event drop is basically you've had a great time, or you've had a fine experience. The experience has been, 8 out of 10, but nothing's gone wrong. Okay, so it's not an amazing experience, but it's not a bad experience. So just imagine you just had a good time, and then you leave, and you go home, and then you feel really depressed.
Yes.
And then you go, hang on, did I not have a good time?
Yeah.
But what you might actually be feeling is your adrenaline's just left your body. You're on low blood sugar. You're physically weary, and you've just like gone from a fully immersive fantasy experience where you got to be. For me, I get to be a archer wizard who is fighting the dark hordes of unspeakable barbarians invading my beautiful empire, to then just being some guy who has to fill out a big Excel spreadsheet on Monday. So like event drop is something people talk about, an event bleed, which we'll go on to later. I think CJ, he'll have some really good points to talk about event.
Yeah, I'm excited to talk more LARP stuff with you two, because I've never done it, but I'm excited to see if there's any crossover.
Yeah,
I imagine there is, with more sort of TTRPG elements.
But with that event drop, I think that it was really good for you to have a quick debrief immediately after, to like fact check some stuff on what you were feeling. You didn't need to say like, hey, I wasn't feeling this, or I was feeling this, and for us to like fact check you back and be like, that was really good. What I want next session is this. Not that it was missing it, but I can really feel this. And then we also had some text messages saying, what kind of scenes would we like coming up in the future? And you get to then quantify how you're feeling against the people in the context without talking through characters, without talking within the context of you're talking on stream. So it's a real kind of quantifying experience.
Yeah.
And just grounding yourself and like, actually, that was fine. That was good. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it is. It's good to get a sense of scale. I think is probably
that's a good way to put it.
Because it can feel so big. It can feel bringing in a new character or stepping out of your comfort zone, doing something completely new with the way that you have always played games can feel so daunting. It can really knock the confidence out of you sometimes.
Yeah.
And then you go in and it's better than you could have ever expected. And everything's working so very well. And then you get to the end of it and you look back and go, was I lost in the heat of the moment? Was this actually good? What did everyone else think? And you can, I have no qualms with saying, like, so last night after the stream ended, I had a massive anxiety attack and I didn't sleep, and just for ages my brain was going round and round in circles, like, was that actually good? There is also, for me, I think this there is an anxiety element, which is I love Paul. I think Paul is the best thing since sliced bread. And Paul is a DM among DMs. He has this very natural way of being able to convey a scene, being able to convey a character, anything, and immerse you in it so entirely and utterly, and then have you aching with laughter. He just holds an entire audience in the palm of his hand. He could lead the characters anywhere, and he always seems to have an answer. And that is how Questing Time really picked up as a stream, and has gotten to the point where it is now. And that's where the community comes from. They love Paul, and they love the original stars of that show. And so coming in and being like, oh, a new stream with a brand new DM and just something I wanna play about with. Oh, it's not Questing Time, it's something completely different and really dumb, is big shoes to fill.
Yeah.
And also there is that comparison element, like, am I actually good? Am I any good? And it helps. It really helps at the end in those debriefing sessions when your players are like, no, we really enjoyed it.
Yeah.
That's what calms me. That's what makes me feel happy. As long as you guys are enjoying it, I don't mind. There will be the reptilian brain bit going, did the audience enjoy it? Was that okay? But that plays second to what is going on at the table. And so reminding yourself of that and having those conversations and being able to say, like, no, I really enjoyed this, but also maybe we change this next time. Maybe we could have this next time.
Yeah.
It doesn't just solidify the idea that you are good at what you do and you are having a nice time and that everyone is around the table is having a good time, but also there are areas to improve on. There are areas to explore. There are areas that will make it so that your players have an even better time next time. And that's really important to me.
You have
your guys' happiness.
You have run games in so many different contexts with so many different audiences. So your breadth of running games is so much more broad than mine. So I couldn't even imagine how you're trying to compare. But honestly, no, we're obviously best friends, have been for tens of years. Incredible. Fantastic session. I had such an incredible time. So you did really, really well. And as you say, like you're working with Paul, who's giving you the most you can give, but you made it your own last night. Absolutely incredible.
Oh,
props.
My heart. My heart. Oh, I'm so excited, and I've got so many things planned.
Excellent. Listeners, if you haven't gone and watched it, go back and watch the video on demand. It's one hell of a cliffhanger at the end. I was like actually shrieking at my microphone. I was like,
with that reveal, that little information drop, you were looking down at your notes, and I just saw your jaw fall open.
Because I was writing.
Think everyone saw it as well, and everyone started to laugh, and I just went, yes.
I fucking got it. I was writing the notes for the previous scene that you just set up, and then you like really pulled the rug from underneath, and I was like, you perfectly managed to get my character out of sorts and out of place, and I was like, wow, I am really feeling my feels. So yeah, absolutely incredible.
Oh, very, very. You can never tell DM enough how much you have had fun at the table. I think is what I'm taking away from this now. Yeah, if you are also inclined, you can watch Sam play Charlie Snapjaw Teachley over on Questing Time's Moonlighters campaign every Sunday at 7 p.m. on twitch.tv/questing time. You can also catch up on the first episode, New Moon, over on the Twitch VODs or on YouTube. It should be uploaded by now, which is exciting. And yeah, come join the crew, come join the cast and see what other adventures they get up to. Oh boy.
I think that's the perfect place for us to leave you all as you all going to scurry away to Twitch and YouTube to catch up. So yes, thank you ever so much to listening to our show. At the Table has been a Project Headphones production. Hang on, I'm reading the wrong extra.
That makes sense.
That makes sense. So Jess, you have outlined where people can watch your GMing skills. Where else can they find you?
You can find me over on Twitter, or what remains of it, at Dr. Bees. You can find me on Instagram at Julahoop, because fuck having the same handles for everything. That's too easy. You can't find me on Facebook. I don't live there anymore. And yeah, you can follow Questing Time at Questing Time or Questing Time Comedy, both Twitter and Instagram. Yeah, go check it out. How about you, Sam?
And I can be found at the Project Headphones Instagram, which is just Project Headphones, and the Project Headphones website, where we have a number of other shows, other projects that have worked, and also some stuff that Jess has been in. So go check that out. We also have a Patreon, which I plugged in the middle of the show, so I won't bug you about it again, but I really think you should. We're also thinking of lining up some bonus content that will be exclusive to Patreon, which will be really interesting for us to get into. But thank you ever so much for joining us, and we'll catch you next time. Bye! Thank you for listening to our show. At the Table has been a Project Headphones production. You can see more of our work over at projectheadphones.com. To support this show, head over to patreon.com/@thetablepod. To get in contact with the show, please email atthetable@projectheadphones.com. That link will also be in the show notes. Please remember to rate, review, and share with your friends on whatever podcatcher or network you're part of. It's the best way we can get the show out there. Thank you, and roll well. Our music is, as you're listening to it, Captain Scurvy by Kevin MacLeod, incomputech.com, licensed under the Creative Commons Attributions 4 license. Find out more at creativecommons.org/licenses/by/4.0/. Thank you very much.